Sorry, can I just ask one quick question about, so on that good work that you've done there, you have benefits growing, at a 6 to 7% rate, and yet you have OPEB growing at a 1.5 to 2.5% rate. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the bigger components of OPEB is the healthcare, is the benefit costs. So my concern and my question really has to do with whether we're understating the OPEB costs, on that basis. I mean, I know we're going, we don't call it an ARC anymore, do we? We have a different phrase for it. But my concern is we are underestimating the increase in that unfunded liability of the OPEB costs going forward.
Carrie, do you want to take this one?
Sure, I can respond to that. So last year, in conjunction with our actuary, we developed an alternative funding schedule that was essentially level and based on the liability as it was determined as of June 30, 2020. And so this was a way really to smooth the impact to the budget, because we had a period of increasing payments being made, the ADC, the actuarially determined contribution. But
that's what it was.
Yeah, then about 5 years out, it dropped off quite a bit. And so we decided to have this alternative funding schedule just to keep it smooth. And it is actually equal payments each year. But obviously, there are going to be changes in enrollments and eligibility and market. And so we did build in a slight increase each year. And then as the liability is updated each year, we will adjust that. But we do expect that it's not going to have a significant increase year over year, because we're not planning on changing the benefit or the eligibility for the benefit. And hopefully the earnings of the trust will mirror what our assumptions are.
Okay, thank you. That's a good answer. It's just if our liability is growing faster than we think and our funding is remaining, constant, then our unfunded liability, of course, our funded ratio is getting bigger. And so that was my concern.
Great, thank you. Emrith?
Parashar, the table you presented, is that different from the one which is on the slide 7 that the school sent us? Because
Yeah, the CCHS table is different with respect to Concord share. So what was on the last slide of what was sent to us shows total cost projections for CCHS. What I did, because I think one of our responsibilities is to look at spending from a Concord resident perspective, is take the CCHS total cost projections and split it out into Concord share, estimated, of course.
Okay.
And show them that, and that's what I'm using as input into the consolidated table.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Right. Yep. Okay.
Could
No
I
more
make one
questions, I guess.
suggestion?
So Lori and Jared, why don't you guys take it away?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Could I make one suggestion? We have one visitor on the attendee list. Is it possible to just bring people in and have them join the meeting as, in the meeting? We've been using this webinar format, and it does keep people off to the side, but that was when we had, our 15 members and then another 15 or 20 people. You had multiple pages. We would be jumbled together with the visitors. There's only one person on the sidelines.
I know, Terry, I think I'd ask Terry to be brought in if she could.
So I have tried to promote her a number of times and it's not working. So I don't know if when you're coming in, or if you're able to say you don't want to be promoted, but I will try that once again. But she's the only one it hasn't worked for. So
Terry, if you can hear
Thanks,
us,
Terry.
if it doesn't work again, maybe you could just log out and try coming back in, and Terry can try to promote you again.
okay, so I just attempted one more time. Okay, so it worked that time.
Great. Okay, Lori, go ahead.
Great. So let me just screen share with you. And this is hopefully a dialogue. Certainly, we wanted to bring you our top priorities, I know issues, objectives, I think we're using those fairly simultaneously a bit tonight, so we're happy to talk through. So I'll do the front side of the discussion and talk on those pieces. We've alluded to some financial thoughts on where and how they might have impact. We're happy to talk on that. And then Jared will go through the 5-year projections that we brought, and we're happy to talk on any of the other documents you have and any questions you have. So our strategic objectives, and we've been calling them both objectives and initiatives. So they're further into our 5-year plan, which is a 2018 to 2023 plan. These have actually stood the test of time and a pandemic, which I'm not sure I would have expected originally. And obviously this is the last full school year that we'll be using these. Was a very inclusive process, and certain things really rose to the top. Because you asked for us to project 5 years out and this plan wraps up in 23, I did make some assumptions as we're bringing this to you. So this, has to be part of the caveat of what we're about to share. I think based on the work that we're doing right now, we expect some parts of these objectives to continue forward. There's a continuum of work to be done. We've made progress. I can see further work probably coming up as priority going forward past 23, but that'll be another inclusive process to confirm that. It's not my plan, it's the community's plan. We have heavily relied on reallocating both funds and staff to maintain and support the priorities without needing to ask for large percentage increases. So that is part of the strategy still going forward. That reduces also our request for additional FTEs as well as for other one-time costs. And that allows us to, maintain our budgets and prioritize where we're going to spend the money in a way that's actually worked pretty effectively these last few years, so that we could accomplish the initial steps in these steps. And in some cases, and I know we've been here to talk, and special ed will come up, in some cases, it's been some cost savings even, which clearly isn't the top priority in these objectives, but I think it's a positive when it works out that way. I'm not going to go through all of this, you've had it, so we'll just highlight that, in terms of our academic and instructional work, we're really trying to meet kids' needs in as many ways as possible through regular education and special education, bringing professional development to teachers, providing these interventions earlier so kids get direct service in whatever their needs are, hopefully maybe avoiding special ed. And that's been a productive direction, and one that actually is becoming more important as the pandemic plays out, and a lot of disruption to the learning time. In terms of funding, and I'll just reference this quickly because I think the big picture is what you're wanting to see, is we've done this bit of reallocation. We've got goals going forward for more professional development. We are able to not need to put all of it towards the budgeted part because of the federal funds that have been allocated to us through the COVID relief packages. So it's worth noting that some of that will be supporting these efforts. And I gave you a couple of examples there. More on student achievement, but this time with a lens on student overall well-being as the work that needs to be done to create a foundation so kids can learn academically. Mental health is by far our biggest concern for students pre-pandemic, and certainly as we come through the pandemic, and so much isolation and very extraordinary circumstances have happened. That continues to be the work I expect we will be doing going forward. Again, we're able to use other funding sources in addition to the budget. ESSER and Concord Ed Fund has been a big supporter of some of these initiatives as well. Inclusive culture, which is our work in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, developing a vision for that. We've offered professional development, working in maintaining diverse staff has been a very big focus of ours and will continue to be, connecting with our Boston families and making sure our curriculum is responsive to a rich culturally diverse community. In terms of, FTE and finance, probably the most significant piece of that was last year's addition of a DEI director. The ongoing work is related to professional development and curriculum. Diverse hiring will be an interesting one. It's all about how we recruit and where the pools are coming from. So that we'd love to talk with you more on. Metco, actually, the state has had additional funds allocated towards Metco. So there's actually been a little bit of relief there in terms of more grant money coming in there than had been. And then the last one is about the physical environments we're in. We had no idea what this would really mean to us when we wrote it in 2018. We will never take physical school buildings for granted ever again. The top one there, one you're very well aware of, is the goal of a new middle school, which we've talked with you on and will continue to. Additional opportunities that, again, who knew a pandemic would, skyrocket us through how to do this. Using our outdoor spaces, maximizing the space inside, being creative in how we do that. I feel like we've done that 3 or 4 times over now. But now we're going to try to settle into what that looks like as kids return full time, and what the years ahead look as we slowly make our way post pandemic. This has had, significant funding questions and discussion on the middle school project. Aside from that, it's been fairly mild to low impact. Concord Ed Funds helped us with some of it. A lot of it's just reimagining what we already have. So those are the highlights of the work that we're doing and expect we'll roll forward the next coming years. And then Jared can just do this high level look at the 5-year projections.
Great. Hi, everybody. So this is the 5-year projections. What we did is we took the literal starting with the teachers. We started this project on September 13th. At that time, we had approximately 156 FTEs. So the 17,336,000 was the actual amount at that time. Then we took the 156 FTEs and rolled them out. People that were on step and lane, we bumped everybody out all the way to FY27. So if there were no changes and minimal retirements, we did have an assumption of $50,000 a year in retirements and a $10,000 a year in longevity savings. So we not only did we do the salaries, we rolled everybody up in longevity as well. So again, if there was no changes, then that would be the approximate percentage increase per year for the CCTA. And for all of you that don't know, we just negotiated a new 3-year contract with the CCTA as well as the CTA, and the COLA is 2.75%. That is all factored in, and that is why you're seeing the highest increase in FY24. For these assumptions for salaries, we used a 2.5% increase on the FY25, 26, and 27. So for non-salaries includes administrators, custodians, everybody that's, non-teacher salaries includes everybody that is not teachers. The FTEs in that category is 88.14. That is the exact amount of FTEs that we had on this particular date. We factored in all of the contracts. We have 7 contracts, enrolled everybody up. Most of our staff are on the top step, non-teachers. So custodians, maintenance, secretaries, pretty much all of them are on their top step. Tutors, for the most part, are on the top step, but we just use the budgeted amount for tutors. So again, we rolled them all the way to FY27, used the same assumption for FY25 through FY27. We did not factor in any retirements. We figured that there really wouldn't be any savings through attrition. Health insurance. So the health insurance is based on the retiree and the active. We have an increase of approximately 6.5% for the retiree insurance, and we used a 5.5% increase for active. OPEB, if you all read the preliminary budget book, which has all of the numbers, each book is about 50 to 70 pages worth of data. We did mention that we do expect OPEB costs when we get the new evaluation in January of 2022 to potentially go up. But the reason why we didn't project that in this is because, one, we don't know. And it's a discussion with the school committee on, first it's the superintendent's recommended amount, and then it's a discussion with the school committee. So at this time, we did not project going higher than the 550. Contract services, as you know, we have about 500 plus lines in every single, in both of our budgets. The contracted service portion, this is the budgeted amount for FY22. The reason why we're expecting a 6% increase is truly due to our case transportation or our special ed transportation costs. While we do have some sort of vision 2 years in advance of what we're gonna see for an increase, the standard increase has been around 6%. So we use pretty much a 6% increase in contract services. All of our maintenance and other things that are included in this, we're expecting for the most part level. We've done a lot of things within. We've hired an extra maintenance staff. That is where the bulk, other than the transportation. In special ed, we also have some contracted services costs. Other category is supplies, equipment, software, and hardware. Again, this is our budgeted version, and we're expecting about 2.5% increase each year, just due to inflation. And then debt, these are the debt numbers for the high school. The debt is until 2038, and these are the next 5 years worth of debt.
Hey, Jared,
Yes.
it's Chris. I just wanted to clarify a couple things on the chart. So in the teacher salary line, if I understood you correctly, it really includes everything, steps, lanes, COLA, it's all in there. Is that fair?
Those are probably my most accurate numbers on this page. We literally took everybody and we rolled it up. It took quite a bit of time, but we wanted to get actual numbers. So if there are no changes and only $50,000 worth of savings each year at the high school, these numbers are going to be fairly constant and safe here.
Okay, great. On the contract services, most of that is the buses, is that correct?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
buses, and then maintenance has quite a bit, and special ed contract services.
Okay, so when I read, I think in your write-up or in the budget book, it mentions that there's a, or under a new calculation, I guess, there's a 2-year lag in how the bill gets calculated. So for FY23, if I understand it properly, it will be based on FY21 ridership.
It will, but because of COVID, we still haven't gotten FY23's assessment yet. It could actually, we could get a credit. We don't know yet, but based on prior to, before COVID, this has been pretty much the standard increase.
Right, but I mean, I would assume ridership was down in FY20, in FY21, I guess. So anyway, so that may be a conservative assumption, but I understand the basis for it.
Yeah. And it's going to jump on the next page and I'll explain that.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions on the high school? Go ahead.
I see some other
Yeah.
hands up. Yep.
Yeah.
I can't see them, so.
Peggy, do you have any question on the high school? Your hand was up before mine.
Yes, two hopefully easy ones. I don't see anything here, and it may be my fault for not reading background, but enrollment. Do we have a
We do,
projection
so
for enrollment?
We do.
And the other question I had, sorry, on the other non-teacher salaries, you said we're all at the top step. And the question I had was, what is the average hourly rate? And I only asked that because, you know, there's been so much discussion about minimum wage and et cetera. And I would just like to know where it seems like those are mostly hourly rates. And I'd like to know kind of where we are compared to, you know, the average $15 that's been discussed for, you know, minimum wage.
Sure. And I can, off the top of my head, I don't know what the average would be, and I can send you over. We have all of our contracts posted online, and what they have is they have the, you know, the steps 1 through 5 for, you know, transportation, secretarial, and then some others have a little bit more than that in custodial and maintenance. And I can send that over, and I can do sort of an average of what our hourly employees are getting paid.
It's safe to say the lowest position we've had has been $17 an hour. Most of them are up in the low 20s-ish, just for frame of reference across the $15 you mentioned.
And then maintenance is a
Okay,
little
thank
bit higher. They have a particular skill, and custodians are in the high 20s.
Right. And then Jared, enrollment at the high school?
Yeah, so the enrollment, and it's in the budget book, but what we did is we did do a projection of, you know, what the assessments would look like all the way through 2027. So we got the October 1st enrollment, and that is a slight increase to Concord, very slight, about 0.09%. We're expecting that to be only about a $32,000 difference. And then it starts going a little bit towards Carlisle, starting in FY24, and then FY25 goes a little bit up in FY26, and then it goes down again in FY27. So if you went into the high school preliminary budget book, and I can send that to you, it's on page 13 and 14, and we do a pretty in-depth. And then in the appendices, we have our October 1 enrollment. And what we did is we also looked at Carlisle's numbers, K through 8, and we did, Ian Rames, the assistant business manager, did a great job doing this, and he went and basically counted out, and that's how we figured it out.
Great, thank you, Jared. Let me go in the order here that I see. Dee, and then John, and then Ray.
Thank you. Jared, just a couple quick questions, and they're going to focus on OPEB for the high school. And can you tell me what is your anticipated year that you will fully fund this liability?
I believe it's the same year as the debt is paid off, 2038. Kerry, 38, I believe.
2038, you mentioned that earlier for the high school.
For the debt,
Yeah. Okay, so 2038. Do you think you're going to have to make any adjustments to this? I'm thinking also about the healthcare, and I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts, just off the top of your head, in terms of where the healthcare costs are going to be going? And I think you had mentioned they might be going up, but can you be a little more specific?
Sure. I think retiree healthcare overall costs will be going up. People are living longer. Every year retirees, there's more retirees. So I expect that to be a larger cost, not necessarily percentage wise going up, but just a larger overall number. That's what we're assuming right now. And then the regular health insurance, we're between an increase of about 1.5% to 5.5% right now. In our group, the healthcare group that we use, and Kerry especially, do a great job. I'm not on that committee, but they do a great job managing it and keeping those costs down as much as they can. Fallon is going away next year, and we'll be having Blue Cross. But I know that the healthcare group, they do a great job managing it.
So part of my question is there a percentage that the school pays and a percentage that the employee pays in their healthcare?
Yeah, it's anywhere from about 51% to around 59%, give or take, maybe 58.
And that's
so
what the school pays?
The school pays the higher portion. By
Okay.
law, you have to pay at least 50%.
Okay, okay. And can you give me any sense about how that is going to impact your OPEB? I mean, are you saying like a 2% increase over what you're currently doing? I just don't know how that's going to fit in, because it seems to be that that's going to have a bigger impact, not just the OPEB is on the budgets.
But I think our answer is similar to what Carrie said, because we are paying as we go. We've been carrying steady amounts as well ever since the ARC sort of faded away and the other actuarial approach began. So the 550 is where we've been the last couple of
Right.
years. And, we're open to looking at it. I think we're expecting another actuarial set of feedback shortly, so we can study it again, look at our balances, look at our projections as to when it gets paid. But remember, we are paying as we go for some of these other increases. So they're embedded in the health insurance category,
Okay,
which is why you're seeing those as 5% increases.
Yep.
So we'll keep you
Okay.
posted. Certainly by the time we get to a final budget, we'll have talked this whole piece through with the school committee and be able to give you more feedback.
great, thank you.
And then one last thing on that. One of the things, and I'm not going to pretend I'm an OPEB expert. I'm very interested in it and I'm learning a lot about it every single year. But actually talking to the actuary, they never really recommend paying 100% of the actuarially determined contribution. They said anywhere around 80% of that. We were also asking them, what's going to happen when we are fully funded? What does that mean? And they actually
Right.
weren't really even able to explain that. So I'm looking forward to getting the report. But yeah, it's certainly up for discussion. But I always say, if I was able to project this, then I probably wouldn't be here. I'd be an actuary making a lot of money, but I'm not that.
There you
smart.
are. Thanks,
John?
Jared.
John?
Yeah, don't get any ideas, Jared. So listen, thank you. This is great. So if I might make one quick suggestion, if you could number the slides, that would be helpful for us trying to,
Right.
sort of go back and forth between them. It's
Sure.
so for future reference. So on the salary increase line, could you just remind me if the COLA was closer to 2.5%, the reason that line is growing at closer to 4 is because of the lanes primarily, I think.
Yep. So
Is that
we
right?
have, so I want to say approximately, I just had this number the other day. I want to say 45% of our teachers currently are on top step.
Yeah.
By the end of this, it will be approximately between 65 and 68, I want to say. So in between, so every year you have the COLA, and then there's a 4% increase on most of the lanes. So if you have so by law, if you're a teacher, you need to have your master's within your first 5 years. So if you come in as a bachelor's 1, you have to get a lane change. You have to get your master's by your 5th year. So that is an automatic, you get the COLA, but you also get the 4% increase. Every time, and we have a number of lanes, as we should. You should pay more for people that have their doctorate. So in some, I think between, I want to say masters and M15, there's a little bit higher than 4%, but for the most part, it's a 4% increase in lanes.
Okay. And you have pretty good visibility on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jared
Yeah.
actually did these one person at a time all through the 5
Yeah.
years coming up. So those are really good, solid numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. And then just the last thing was that bottom line debt, the absolute dollar debt amount is important, but I'm going to suggest there might be some sort of debt service metric or debt service ratio going forward that might be a little more helpful in terms of seeing, the cost of that debt going forward. So maybe that's a discussion for next time.
So yeah, yes, we do have all of the, and I can do a ratio, but we do have the debt in the book all the way to 2038. That's in the debt section.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
John, that was going to be one of the things that a couple of metrics I was going to throw into the consolidated tables that you saw earlier for not only the school, but also the town. So that's good. Let's see, we've got Ray and then we've got Brian.
Okay, real simple questions, I think. What is ESSER 3? I didn't know what that was. Where do those funds come from and how much comes to the CCHS?
Sure.
Another similar question is the Concord Education Fund. How much is that? Where is that coming from? And then just a sort of a vocabulary question. DW, is that district-wide or DW management? I'm sorry.
District-wide.
Okay.
Yeah. Laurie, do you want to answer the CEF and then I'll get the ESSER?
Sure. So the Concord Education Fund works with us through a grant process. Teachers can apply and get smaller grants or bigger ones depending on the projects that they're proposing. We are highly supported in different environments where the Ed Fund will talk with me on needs that may have been arising in the district and work with me directly on different allocations. So for example, when we first went remote in 2020, they paid for the high school's Zoom subscription that we suddenly needed to stay afloat. The reason I mention it here is they just funded some challenge success work. That's a program out of Stanford University about maintaining balance for kids and mental wellness. And they were able to help fund some of the surveys that the program provides. And it's not only the survey, it's all the data analysis that goes with it. So it's anywhere from a project of maybe 10,000. They also funded, things like bike racks and bike repair stations as the pandemic played out. Usually the teacher grant program is an annual 50 to 80,000. These other one-time events that I just mentioned might be 10. It all depends on their fundraising efforts every year annually and where they are and where they're prioritizing their money.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
And the ESSER?
Yeah, so the ESSER is what we're calling the COVID grants. What it is it's the elementary and secondary emergency relief funding. And sticking with the region, the first round was called the CARES Act money. And we got $297,000, and that had to be spent last fiscal year. But then since then, they came out with ESSER 2, and that amount for the high school was approximately $95,886, and that needs to be spent by 9/30/2023. And then and we got a larger ESSER 3, and that needs to be spent by 9/30/24. The first round was really specific. We had to use it for really just for PPE, anything to do with getting kiddos back in school and dealing with strictly COVID. The other ones, ESSER 2 and 3, as well as the DESE emergency relief, that was a small amount of 26,000, can be a little more open-ended. So you can use it. You can use it on almost anything, except for the ESSER 3. We did have to fill out a packet for that, and get input from the community and in the schools, and we brought that to the school committee. And that's something that can be amended throughout the year, but we have a plan to use that in the next 3 years.
Thank you. I understand.
Right.
Hey, Jared, how are you? Thanks for all this information. This seems like a mountain of work, so thank you for sending it over. I just wanted to take one step up, just at a higher level, just to really kind of help myself frame all of the information that you've provided. I'm looking as I was looking through your packet, it looks like you put together the CCRSD budget and the CP and the Concord Public School budget within the DESE framework. So you've got all of these line items, and it really kind of shows. And really what I was trying to do at a high level is really understand what you guys have done during 21 and what those numbers look like versus what the 5 years projections look like. And it looks to me, and help me with my math here, you did it's 34,571, which turned out to be the actual budget line number in terms of expenses. And the proposed 5-year budget is, they weren't totaled up here, but it looks like it's 31,858. Is that right?
Yes, there are some things that we at the time, we're going to sharpen our pencils a little bit, that we didn't feel comfortable projecting, such as special ed tuitions are not in here. And then, like I said, we have about 500 lines, and I'd say 90% of these are projected, but there are some other things that usually don't go up much. But we wanted to give what were the drivers? We put the buckets. That's how we did this. What were the 4, 5, 6 different buckets? What are going to be the drivers? Obviously, it's salaries and special ed tuitions, but that's something that at the time we did not feel comfortable projecting. We're doing that for this budget process.
Oh, no, I
Brian, what we're
appreciate
gonna-
all that. My underlying question is really about, there's definitely a positive outcome to these two numbers. There's probably going to be more inputs. I'm trying to get a feel for where you think this might land, because as I'm looking at the actual grant money that you're actually receiving, if you even pull that out of the sort of the difference in the two numbers, it's 34 between 31. You still on paper are showing a significant savings going forward than we currently are, if I understand this right.
So Brian, I think you're asking what Parashar was talking about at the beginning. We're going to fill out the rest, that other category, and fill it in so you can actually compare what you've got for 21 and then across these 5-year projections and see a bigger picture comparison. So we've just got to fill in what we don't have on the charts here. So
Okay,
we're going to do that.
that's great. And I guess I was just going to headline with very much appreciate whatever the savings looks like.
I got it.
So
We'll take that forward while we finish it up.
Yeah, no. So I will be interested to just see how that turns out. But $2.7 million is a lot. Is a lot of money. And so I just wanted to better understand. Do you think it's going to be sort of at parity, or do you have a sense, or is it just still to be determined? Like you just really can't.
I can tell you what the goal has been, is that is going to help bring you a stable guideline request that doesn't have big, high increases to it because of some other things that might have changed. So the goal is, we're being cautious with that money. Some districts are using it to add all this extra stuff right now, and then they're going to find they can't sustain it. So we're trying really hard to be sure we don't do that.
Yeah.
So we're using it to offset other things or to mitigate any increases. We know we might need an FTE for a reading specialist, for example. That's probably not going to end up in your budget request because we can fund it through the grant money. So I think we're on the same page philosophically.
Okay.
We'll work to get the numbers to you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, why don't we go to CPS, and then once we're done with CPS, I'd like to go back. I know I've got some questions on the strategic priorities,
Oh, good.
Lori, that you've identified, and I'm sure other members likewise have similar questions on those.
Great.
Great.
Jared, you're in CPS?
I do. So similar format here. CTA salaries a little bit more because we had instead of 186 FTEs, we had 223.6 FTEs. And then 94 of our current FTEs, 94 out of the 223 have longevity. So what we did again is we rolled everybody up until FY27. We used an assumption of $200,000 per year in retirements. And what that basically is if somebody goes out at 125,000, we try and hire around the M5, M6, M7 range of 75,000, and that was our assumption. And then we also looked at about $20,000 a year in longevity. So same contract. They actually have the same salary scale. They got the same COLA of 2.5, 2.5, 2.75, and that is why you're seeing in FY24 a larger increase. And then we did change a little bit of the longevity scale that the CTA had to have parity with the CCTA. Non-teacher salaries, non-teacher salaries is the same category as what was in the high school page. We have about 182.61 FTEs in that. And again, most of those are on 3-year contracts, secretaries, custodian, maintenance, includes non-union administrators, principals, etc. And again, the last 2 years, we assumed a 2.5% increase. Contract services, so that 10% is sticking out. The reason for that is because we got a credit in FY22's assessment from Case Collaborative for transportation due to low ridership. So I was assuming, because we took that, say, $150,000, $200,000 credit, that, and we budgeted that even if it goes up just to the FY20 amount, you're looking at a significant increase. We haven't received those numbers yet, but using that assumption, that is why I'm projecting a larger than normal increase in contracted services, and then a steady 6% increase through FY27. And then the same exact assumptions for supplies, equipment, software, and hardware, just a 2.5% increase for inflation.
All right, Jared, thank you very much. Brian, you had a question?
Yes, one other question I meant to ask you guys this with respect to CC, to the high school, regional district, but it also relates to CPS as well, which is the DESI descriptions. I know that these are DESIs, these are not your descriptions, so I just want to understand what falls into these buckets. The 9100 lines, the tuition to non-public schools, and then there's a tuition to out-of-state schools, and then you guys have line item actual numbers in those buckets. I was just hoping to understand what they actually meant, and I'm saying this mindful that these numbers are fungible in your budget to a certain degree. I get that, and we shouldn't overly scrutinize your budget. That's for the school committee to do. But can you just help me understand what those buckets mean, please?
Yeah, so DESI has nine different, what we call 1,000 functions, and then they're broken up into the 100 sections. And we do put DESI's chart of accounts in our budget book. So they are in there. Every year we submit an end of year report that is due around this time. It is audited, and it is based on, it is all based on DESI functions. So for the most part, those at the bottom of each 1,000 chart, I do give a brief description of what is in it. So if you're looking at the 1,000, that's, school committee, superintendent costs, business office and HR costs. Those are the district leadership and administration costs. The 2,000s will always be your biggest cost center. That's all of your teachers and all of your instruction and your building leadership. The 3,000s, that's your health services, that's transportation, athletics. Maintenance is in the 4, custodial costs. Your fixed charges are your retirement and your health insurance, that's the 5,000. Community services, that is your, community services is transportation. It is actually, I can get even more granular. It's transportation to non-public schools, like parent reimbursement, stuff like that. And then fixed assets is fixed assets capital. And then the debt is the 8,000s, which CPS does not have. And then programs with other districts is all of your tuitions. It's your charter school assessment. It's your school choice assessment.
Which for us,
So
those are
9,200.
non-
So for example, 9,200 tuition to out-of-state schools, 180,000.
Yep.
That means, what does that mean?
If we had a school that was out of state that we were paying for. It would
special ed
fall-
tuitions.
Special ed, special.
They're all
Oh,
special ed
okay.
tuitions.
Yeah, I'm
Brian.
sorry, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Good
Kathy,
questions.
Kathy, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. I have a question about the teacher salaries versus the non-teacher salaries. Can you give me some rationale for the 1% variance between the two categories in terms of year-over-year increases?
Sure. So most of our non-teachers also include non-union people that are not on step and scale. So they're not getting an automatic increase in scale or step, I should say. And then most of our union, I'd say 95% of our union employees are all on their top step. So they're only getting COLA. And my assumption is by FY25, every single one of our union employees will be at their top step in their scale, so that's why.
So you can pay your non-teachers less.
Well, we use basically the same assumption that teachers are getting for this activity for a COLA we use for our non-teacher salaries, 2.5. So if you're assuming that everybody is at top step by FY25, which we are, then I just applied COLA to that cost.
But isn't COLA 2.5? So, you've got 4%, pretty much almost 5%.
Right, so the teacher salary schedule allows them for every year they're there for the first 16, they get an increase as the longer they stay. They also simultaneously, depending on their education, they can move over in what, steps and lanes. So the lanes are the education. Most teachers, as they're there moving their way through the grid, are getting both along the way at certain intervals. They're at least getting step, if not lane as well. That's in addition to COLA. So you're going to have the 2.5% plus whatever the people that are still moving through the step and lanes. So that bumps it up. Everybody who's at the top of the chart gets COLA only.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. We're happy to provide those. They're right in the contract.
Yeah.
Chris, and then Dean, and then Dee.
I'm next.
Yep.
Okay. Jared, is the $548,000 projected savings from the consolidation of the buildings in your projection?
They are not.
That'll be the work we do over the next week to get a bottom line number to all of you. That will certainly be part of our projection of what we need to incorporate into the bottom line. Okay. We haven't provided you utilities and some of those other categories yet. So as we go forward, we will.
Okay, I see. There was I forget what category it was in, but it was called food, Jared.
Yes.
And for CPS, it had a kind of a strange looking number of 320,000 with no budget. What is that?
Sure. So the last 2 years, the food service budget, the food service revolving account, which is self-sustaining, pays all of our food service employees, obviously due to the lack of participation in the state funding it at a lower amount than we would get, they lost money. So what we did is we don't budget anything in the general fund for food service. But what we did do the last 2 years to get those back to the healthy revolving accounts that we want them to be, anywhere from 3 to 5 months worth of expenses, we charged some of the food service expenses to the general fund with some of the surplus that we had.
Okay, so when you say it's self-sustaining, so typically it's paid for by lunch fees or by the state or something? It's somehow outside the budget?
Both.
Yeah, yep, both. Yeah.
Okay.
So the profits as well as state reimbursement.
Okay, I see.
And I've always said this, I inherited, a wonderful balance in there that many districts do run it in the negative, but, especially this new food service director, I keep saying, we're serving 10 10 different varieties of meals a day at the high school. And he's doing the best he can with, given the circumstances, and the kids, the participation right now, this year seems to be higher than it has been in my 4 years there.
So the reason why there was no coverage of the cost was related to the fact that there were no lunches?
Well, participation was really down at the end of FY20. If you remember, we went remote and we did pay all of our staff. So we were paying our staff, but did not get any revenue. And then in FY21, especially at the first, most of the year, our participation was really down.
And remember, the kids weren't in school full time. They were hybrid and such. So, yeah.
Okay, I see. There's a big differential between what CPS got for federal grants and what the high school got. So the CPS has about $1.6 million left, and they had over 2.1 or 2.2 million, I think, in their total grant. Why is it so much larger for elementary than for high school?
Yeah, it's based on our Title I formula. And it's just based on that, and that's how they came up with all of the funding.
Okay, I see. Okay, good. Thank you.
Dean?
My question is pretty simple, and I think I know the answer, but the CTA teacher salaries on this chart are, the contracts are identical to what was negotiated with the district, and yet these lines are going up at higher rates across the years. My assumption here is that your cohort of teachers is farther down the lane situation. You have fewer people at the top end who can't get any higher. And as a result, the whole thing drifts up, and that just is more costly. Is that how that's explained?
That's part of it. And the other piece, and we do break it out, is the longevity piece. There to over 3 years of this contract, there's now parity between the longevity. There was a big discrepancy of what the CCTA was getting versus the CTA.
Okay,
so that's why this is bigger.
We're still smoothing that out, is what
correct.
But you're right. It's the high school staff is more veteran as a
correct.
whole. So you're correct, Dean, in that we can give you where they all are at, but you've got it.
All right, thanks.
Yes, I just have a quick question. Jared, I believe I heard you say that for the supplies, equipment, hardware, software, that both the high school and at the CPS, that there was not, there wasn't going to be much change, like a 2.5% or something like that. And I'm wondering, what are the replacement schedules for the hardware equipment?
So we do have, good question. We do have that built in. So we feel that the number that's already built into the budget is not going to increase.
Okay.
So it's already ingrained.
We spent the last 4 years really trying to level that off. So it wasn't ups and downs and spikes. So it is nice and level now.
Okay, so you still have your replacement schedule and it's built in. Who's next on the line for new equipment?
So we just added laptops to the elementary schools. We're on a continual, we only do a portion of the middle and high school every year. So there's always a section of them that are being replaced. And that's the way to keep it really level. So you never have this big gap where one year you're not replacing anything. It's always better to do a smaller amount every year. So that's been working as we've gotten that online.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Great. Jared and Lori, thank you very much. I know it's been a lot of effort over the last couple of weeks to pull this together, so appreciate it. Let me start off with maybe, Lori, if we can go back to the first slide around the strategic objectives. That, I appreciate the objectives out here. I think one of the questions I have, not only on this one, but a couple others, and I don't necessarily need the answer now.
Sure.
But I think it would be helpful when you come back in and talk about the 23 budget and how these strategic priorities are reflected in there.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about, well, you want to focus on, strengthening special ed and providing professional development, et cetera. And then you talk a little bit about the fact that you're going to try to do this within current spending levels, if you will.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful for us to understand what the trade-offs are that you're making, right? So in other words, to the extent that you're going to emphasize some of these strategic objectives and areas, what are the trade-offs you're making? What other areas you're going to sort of step back and scale back from? And also, again, not all of these might necessarily be specifically identifiable in terms of costs, but where possible, it would be helpful to do that. So for example, when you talk about expand the PK through 12 tiered levels of support, is that an extra 10%? Is it an extra 200,000? Whatever those might be, I think would be helpful to understand. And then I guess the overarching question I have, and we've touched on it a little bit, is the contracts were renegotiated and I think end in 24. Is that right? Fiscal year 24 or 25?
Yep. End of 24.
End of 24. And I think having a little bit of sense of, what are we doing to attract newer talent? I know you've said that a lot of the teachers are veterans, et cetera. And what steps are we actually taking? I see some professional development here, but as education changes and the needs of the students change, et cetera, what are some things we're doing to make sure we've got the right mixture of students or teachers and the right skill levels, both at CPS and CCHS? Having a little bit more visibility and insight into that would be helpful from my perspective.
Oh, great. Be happy to.
Let me go around and see, so in terms of top strategic priority that I think you touched on in a couple different places, but for me, it's focused on making sure we've got the right set of teachers with the right skills that our students are going to need over the next 3 to 5 to 7 years. And what are we doing to make sure we're on the right path? I didn't quite see it called out that way.
You're completely right. The one place it's very specifically called out is in the cultural competency work, but we can certainly flesh it across it's certainly the first 3 objectives for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let me open it to others. Can you stop sharing the screen, Lori?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, so I could see you all.
Yeah, that way we can see everybody. Let me just go around the horn. Hopefully nobody comes in and out, so I get everybody. So Peggy, you're at the top of my screen. I'll start off with you and just quickly go around. Any thoughts?
No, I'll be remarkably silent right now.
All right, Amrith.
Thank you so much for this information. It's a mountain of information. I'm just wading through it right now. One thing which strikes me in here is the majority of the conversation so far has been around teachers and staff and things along those lines. What trade-offs are you making in terms of other initiatives where you're either making a choice where if you had more money, you would choose something which was either sustainable or otherwise better for the community, which you're not doing? Or can you talk about things which you are doing, which are in that vein, good for the community and entirely unrelated to teachers and salary and equipment and computers, which we've talked about for a while?
Sure. And, there's always things we're trying to do for the community. And in the best case is it's good for the community and includes teachers and kids and all of that. Probably the one I would name that we're bringing back some real energy to is sustainability in the buildings. And some of that's certainly being energized by the work on the middle school project. We were at a pretty solid place as, and I'm talking environmental sustainability and such. We were at a pretty solid place in all of the schools pre-COVID. We were composting in every school. We had a lot of good momentum happening. And then COVID hit and everything we did had to change. And a lot of it, unfortunately, was not as environmentally friendly. So we're getting that all back online. And that, for me, is one that we've been really connected with a lot of the community groups in town and really working with Concord's sustainability director, integrating with the goals of the community and Concord's goals on paper. But it's also about teaching kids and the next generation and what they can do differently. So that's one example that comes to mind right away. We could flesh out more for you, I'm sure. Bring it next
There's
time.
one specific one which I have. Sorry, Parashar, just to follow up to that.
No.
Dean, you brought this up at the meeting we had either 2 weeks ago or a week ago about buses.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see that called out anywhere, Dean? Or because I haven't found it anywhere in this packet about anything to do with buses and replacing buses and electric buses or anything like that.
Yeah, can I grab that one, Jared?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
One of the pages in the budget book has the current inventory of buses that we have.
Yep.
We have 2 electric buses right now. We're waiting on a third. Do you know the timeline, Jared? Yeah, the
Yeah,
production's
it's gonna
really
be a
slow
while.
right now.
Yeah.
We're waiting on a third. Last town meeting or 2 town meetings ago, we were fortunate enough to receive some additional funds so we can build more charging stations at the bus depot. And then the regional school committees just put in for the 4th. Jared, am I getting this right?
Just put in for so we have 3. So we just put in for the 3rd. The
Yeah, there we go.
VW grant one is, the bid and everything is done. It's not on the road yet, so we're still.
So we'll have 4 by the time this time next year hopefully rolls around, and that's a major work for us. The electric buses run about $300,000 each versus under 100,000 for diesel. So we're always, looking for creative ways to come at that. We can flesh that out more thoroughly. I think you make a good point to tell the story.
I wouldn't say you have to flesh it out. There's 158 pages of stuff here, which I'm trying to read over the
Absolutely.
couple of days.
We
So,
understand.
so some of
Happy
these
to answer your
questions will be
questions.
naivete. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Peggy, I'll come back to you and then we'll keep going around the room. Peggy?
No, if I could my only comment is, why are buses, they just feel like they're too big. And is there any movement to a medium-sized bus that's electric? That would, accommodate fewer seats, but maybe more accurate for the ridership.
I don't know I don't think there's a lot of electric options out there yet. That's been one of the struggles, is the production is not caught up to the demand. More and more across the US we're asking for these. I have not seen any smaller electric size vehicles. Have you, Jared?
I haven't, but I will say though, the technology is night and day difference than it was when we got our first bus, the E-Lion. So I wouldn't be surprised in the next 3 to 5 years if there's going to be a lot more options, and we're hoping that that the costs do go down. We do have an electric bus expert in town, Brian Folds, and we've been picking his brain and working with him. And he's been wonderful. And he'll be able to help us once the technology gets there. We'll be picking his brain even more.
Well, I know Brian very well, and I think smaller buses that could be used during the day for our elder population and et cetera, whatever. I'll shut up.
All right.
We hear where you're going, and we've been part of that discussion of how can our bus fleet support the community needs and transportation. So we've been in that discussion and would certainly continue to be.
Chris?
You're on mute.
Okay, there we go. Dr. Hunter, is there anything coming out of COVID and remote learning that is going to change the way we deliver education in the future? Is there anything that was good that we want to keep? And is that going to change?
There are some good things. We definitely, I was at a presentation yesterday, I was able to talk about this. I think, you're experiencing one of them. The technology has given us more options. What we did learn is remote learning is not good for a lot of kids, and being in person is really important. But, in events where we can communicate with the families and give them a more convenient, accessible equitable way to engage with us. Zoom isn't going away in terms of some of those options. Evening things, we would struggle to get parent presentations and get a crowd in, and now we can draw hundreds of people fairly quickly. So no question, our ongoing relationship with the community, probably like you've experienced in hybrid for the school committee, we're going to be more connected because of the options and choices we've had for that. In terms of the kids and the way we teach, we prioritize relationships and connections so that we stayed, a community no matter where we were and how we were operating. And I think that's been incredibly important and will continue to be. And that sets the baseline for the academics then to be, it addresses some of our mental health needs and allows us to help kids access their academic possibilities once they're feeling good about where they are and feeling connected to the community that they're in. I think the other last one I'd highlight right now is the outdoor space. We really had, there's several things that we had always had these grand plans. We were going to strategically lay out how we were going to get there, and we're going to build this beautiful outdoor classroom, which is still great. But then COVID, we put up a tent and we realized they'll go outside with a tent. So I think some things got simpler, and that's been really good too. So the outdoor and the way we see the outdoors is incredibly different than when we started all this. We're still eating lunch outside every single day, and they will until the snow flies, I think. So
that's great. And connected to Peggy's question, I know that there was a big decline in ridership because parents were, they didn't want their kids on the bus, and so they were all.
We had to limit capacity for COVID reasons, so we weren't allowed full capacity for a good portion. Yeah.
So I know ridership was way down. Do you think it's going to come back, or are we going to need less buses?
Jared and I were on a call this morning with John Arena. Our ridership is higher than it's been in a long time. I think parents have had enough of driving kids to school, and they're back on the buses. So
good.
Our ridership's up, actually.
And when you think about when you guys come back, or you can comment on it now if you want, but it's fine if it's not tonight. But I'm interested in how you're going to use some of the money that's been set aside here, right? So we built up E&D to the top level. We also set up a $200,000 stabilization reserve. In the revolvers, whether it's food or athletics, we've got, in some cases, more than a year's worth of balance there. So I'm interested in how those balances may be used to offset some other costs. Obviously, we talked about COVID as well, but that's a key element to us understanding how the budget is going to get pulled together. So again, not tonight, but at some point, I'm going to be pretty interested in that.
Yeah, no, Chris, it's definitely part of the FY23 story. There's no question.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Dee?
Thank you. First, Lori and Jared, I'd like to just thank you for the way that you have approached your presentations at this level and your strategic plan. The best way I can describe it is that you have taken a real holistic approach to education. It's not just teachers, it's not just operations, it's not just kids. You have really taken the time and with your staff and with community groups to really look at all pieces and how they fit together. So I was really impressed with all the points that you had on each one. So thank you very much for that. And there's one that I wanted to just bring up, which is section 2, and it's 2.3. And in that, these words just struck me. In here, quote, you wanted to redefine student success and reimagine the role of homework. And it just, I wish they had that 50 years ago. It just seemed to me that maybe it's a reaction to what you hear kids saying or parents saying, which is okay, because then you're hearing what they're saying, So I just wanted to mention that one. And then finally, I'm just going to ask you completely different. So thank you for everything that you've done in terms of how you've organized and how you've thought through presenting information to us. And the last one is, I just want to know if you have any plans. I read through the capital improvements and capital plan. section. And I was wondering if you're going to be presenting any of that this year.
Certainly we will, as we bring FY23. No question. So if there's any
And
questions
anyone in
tonight, we can
particular,
answer.
are you going to get the tractor? Are you going to buy the tractor?
I'd love to. The maintenance guys would love that.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't they though?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll bring all that to you as we come back.
Brian, thank you, Dee.
Yeah, I had a question. Since 20 and 21 were both non-typical years because of COVID. If we're looking back for sort of what should we say, an actual, excuse me, an actual year that is representative and hopefully will be a reference point for 2023. Would it be should we assume that the budget for 2020 is a good substitute for having 2019 numbers?
I'll take that. Yeah. So, and as I said in my memo, FY21 in my 12 years doing this was, it was the most unpredictable year I've ever had, but also we've never had in a way more money because of all of those grants, but we were constantly, like the grants, it was almost a full-time job just managing that. I would go back to FY19, truthfully, because in FY20, while the budget was, we obviously were not budgeted for COVID, we didn't know what that was. So I would say the budget is a good reference point, but the actuals are not. The FY19, I would say, which was my first budget that I built here, so I don't know how accurate it is a good barometer, though, of our real spending than FY20 and FY21.
Yeah, probably combine
Right.
FY19 actuals and FY20 budget is probably the best normative data.
Right. So we don't, I mean, I don't have access to 20 to 19 actuals. So I was going to say, can I use 20 budget as a sort of a substitute
Yeah.
for that? Or
I think
Okay.
you can, and we can provide 19 actuals.
And I can show
I
you.
would say 20, sure.
I don't know if you have I can put the budget book for FY20 that has FY19 actuals in it. So online we have our budget books, and we always do 1 to 2 years worth of budgeted versus actual. So they are online under the finance section. And let me know, Ray, if you can't find it.
Okay, I'll do that. And another crazy question. I'm so old that I remember a Mr. Wizard on television when I was a kid. And I think he preceded Captain Kangaroo maybe, or something like that. The point I was going to make was that when we went to remote learning, I was thinking that maybe there's an opportunity for having some presentations to kids who certainly get a lot of their input from technology. The non-formal education part they absorb, by the hour apparently. Maybe there's an opportunity to benefit from our experience in the last 2 years to have really top-notch lecturers, be able to buy an American history presentation by somebody who was just charismatic and, you'd subscribe to that TV channel. And then have recitation. When I was in college, we had lectures and recitations, and lectures were, somebody speaking, just a presentation, and could be done to a couple hundred people, and recitation was interactive. Maybe that would be a way that, I'm not sure what the cost benefit would be. Maybe the quality education benefit might be worth exploring. Am I communicating?
Yes, and I think you're absolutely correct. We are able to connect with whether it be authors of children's picture books. In terms of professional development, like the world has just shifted enormously. We just ran a number of sessions with top-notch nationally known names that suddenly the cost was manageable and their availability doesn't require travel and all that. And we're accessing people we never could have before. So you're absolutely correct.
Right. Actually, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks again to you both for all of the information. I'm going to look at it more closely. I didn't get through the big booklet, so my
Yeah.
apologies. I did want to just say thanks for the priorities. I know you're always trying to figure out what the opportunity costs are, and you're trying to prioritize these things. And it's just my observation about one of these priorities, which I just want to compliment you on, is the diversity piece, the diversity priority. I know you're putting a lot of work into that. You've hired a DEI officer. The town is, as you know, having conversations about putting a DEI commission together and really trying to understand, what should be going on there. My question is about what you actually put on the page here, which was, we'll continue to focus on diverse hiring, which may require fiscal support depending on the outcomes of upcoming discussions. I just wanted to understand what you meant by that line.
Sure. No, it's great. Good question. The CCTA, when we bargained with them, asked to form a working group to talk on what, I think back to your question, Parashar, how do we attract diverse quality candidates? And we're going to start having conversations. So we don't know where that's going or what that means. I can give you one example of my wonderings right now. We had two teachers of color leave us this summer because another district was able to offer them a combined paid position during the day and offset to their higher education more than what we offer at night, like full degree kind of offset. So I don't know where it's going, but it's certainly, I think, an intriguing one. I think we're excited to have the teachers at the table with us to brainstorm it. We'll keep you posted on what that might look like.
Okay, great. Thanks.
No, thanks. Great question.
Thanks, Brian. Eric?
Thanks for a great overview. Dee touched on this a bit on capital planning. The middle school aside, we're certainly all aware of the need on that one. Can you share what you view as the highest priority capital needs? I saw the lists in the budget reports, which were very helpful, but I'm interested in the sense of priority.
Sure. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I can start there. So as you know, the CPS capital budget is under the town manager's budget. So it's under 900,000. And then just so you all know, we did reduce it in anticipation of the middle school being open, because every year we have 50,000 put aside for each building, Sanborn and Middle, for safety. The next few years are going to be really it's the Ripley building. The Ripley building is extremely inefficient. We have a number of needs there, anywhere from parking improvements to potentially installing a connection to the sewer line, the boiler replacement. One of the things we're looking at doing right now is we have money set aside in FY24 to help some sort of engineering that we can use the boilers at the Sanborn building. The boiler room at the Sanborn is the nicest room in the building, and that boiler it would save the district and the town a lot of money if we could retrofit it over to Ripley. So that is our priority. The last 2 years were ERUs, energy recovery units at our elementary school. We do have some work in here, I believe, for the Willard School that needs some. But those were our priorities, and every year we start from scratch in a way, but these ones are not going away.
And I'll just mention, we're working with the town. We've put, the town has put in a Green Communities grant to do some of the energy work at Ripley. So we're hopeful that'll be a matching grant and offset some of the costs. So good question. Thank you. Good questions.
Thanks, Eric. John? All right, we'll get back to John. Dean?
Am I on mute? No, good. I focused on this at the select board / town budget meeting of this nature last week, and I'm going to ask the same question here. Sustainability goes through everything we do. We're trying to, use a lens of how do we do this as green as possible. But the urgency is growing, and how are you anticipating making very hard choices about your budget that will cause us to, spend big money doing things that are green? And I'll use an example. I used the example of buses at the meeting with the town when we were talking about their budget, which is, it's very hard. It's almost impossible for you to, buy the electric, like if you have to replace 2 buses a year, and that's in the CPS budget book, it says we're going to buy 2 in FY22, and those are going to be diesel buses. What can we do as a community, and what can you do with your budget to really make the correct choice, which is to start just buying electric buses, buying the, or on the Ripley side, this is on the CPS budget, you're talking about fixing the boiler room. Well, we probably ought to be looking at an electric air source heat pump system for that, not bringing, natural gas boilers over from Sanborn, just because we have them. I mean, these are the choices that we should be making, but they're incredibly expensive. And how do we do it? This is a real important issue.
Yeah, we agree. I think we're trying to get as creative as possible. So for example, the regional electric bus is going to qualify under the state subsidy for regional transportation. So what's the percentage the state's going to end up picking up, Jared?
75% of that.
75%. We're
over 5 years.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean,
We suspect they're going to catch that loophole and close it after that hits their desk, but it qualifies. The Green Community Partnership, I think, is another example. I think we need to look internally, and COVID really threw us off track. If there's one lesson we're hearing a lot about at the new middle school, we're never going to get to that at UI if the habits of the people in the building don't change. So I think there's savings to be done there. And one thing we talk a lot about, we can leverage change in the adult humans, because when the little humans learn that it's not so great, they go home and they have impact beyond. Our trash bill went down significantly. Yes, we're putting out a little bit for composting, but it's not necessarily equal to each other. So it's every lens, Dean. I think you're right. It's just taking the time to peel back and think outside the box.
Yeah, it just feels to me like the urgency of Massachusetts's targets for 2030 is, that's not that far away. Right. And we have a long way to go, and it's going to be expensive to get there on all fronts. It's just, it's problematic. It's just really problematic. All right. That's my
Thanks, Dean. John?
Sorry, are you asking me, Parshar?
Yeah, did you have any questions?
I'm sorry, no, I didn't have my hand up, and so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Kathy?
Thank you, and thank you all very much for the preparation that went into the presentations tonight. I echo most of what. One nice thing about going last is that most everything's been said and asked. So I really wanted to talk about the schools going green, and I think Dean just crossed into that quite a bit. But is there any plan to change the way in which electricity is generated or used, or the heating at all? Is there any plan at all? Or is it just however things evolve?
So, I certainly the middle school is getting the most focus on that right now. And that's where our work is happening most pronounced. We're continually having these conversations on, that's why all that ERU work is happening, because it will be more efficient and it's better for the environment and it will save money. So I think that's always in our lens. We're going to need to dive in deeper coming off of COVID. We're getting our sustainability committee back up. Jared and Kristen Herbert are going to run that, bring the community members in, the town's sustainability director, the newly hired. We're trying to get really re-energized on this, Kathy, coming off of the pandemic. So ask us again, I think in, next time we come back, and certainly in 6 months, and we're going to work on that strategic planning piece of what we're going to do next.
Okay, thank you for that information. This, you know, I applaud the town and I applaud the schools for taking the issue of diversity very seriously and putting a lot of effort into it. What can you tell me about the diversity of our student population?
Sure. It's evolving slowly, but it's evolving. We're anxious to look at our October 1 data and see the demographic and take a look. We're at 20-25% that identify as non-white right now, which is significantly different. And that can be all different backgrounds. And so we're studying that. We're trying to aim that our teacher population will be reflective of that. We're also wanting to be sure we're including other groups of LGBTQ families and students, any other group that may feel like they're marginalized, and make sure they're feeling included in our schools. So inclusion is all feeling welcome and making sure that's the case. Our focused work right now is on race. We see needs there that we want to be sure we start to address: academic achievement gaps and expectations, really feeling welcome and included, looking at microaggressions and how those play out during a child's school day and school life. A very strong focus on our teachers of color and making sure they've got connections and that they're feeling well supported across so many ways. And then just making sure it's a component of how our instruction arrives. We're modifying texts that we might use in English class, so they're of more diverse backgrounds. Social studies is obviously very laden in topics that relate, making sure we're talking through that with kids. So it's becoming a lens that's very comprehensive. And I think the background work we've done to date, now having the leadership position, and I can't say enough about the engagement of this community, parents, teachers, students. The students' voices are very important. You know, it's a continuum and we've got ways to go for sure, but the discussions are active and energized.
Well, that all sounds very, very positive. Thank you.
It's good. It's hard work. I'm going to say right out, that's hard work, and they're very tough topics. You know, it's
well, with a little
takes
tongue,
commitment.
with my tongue in my cheek, thank you for not following the Texas school guidelines.
Mhm. Approaches, yeah, different parts of the country are coming at it differently.
So last topic is the imminent middle school, or we hope imminent middle school. This particular 5-year projection did not include any of the debt service or changes in expenses based on 2 buildings, 1 building. None of that's been baked in, correct?
No, but I think when we work this week on it, we'll make adjustments to 26 and 27 to reflect some of what we're anticipating, so you can see it.
Thank you.
That's a good idea.
For this cut, Kathy, we purposefully left it out. I think we do have to figure out whether we want holistic or whether we just leave it out and just say this is the base without it.
Yeah, with an asterisk.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got Lois and then Greg and then Peggy. I see your hand. Let me give Lois and Greg an opportunity to talk and I'll come back to you. Lois? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, all right. I had a moment. I needed to find the cursor. And it is true, coming last or coming close to last. Most of the things you want to say have already been said. But I do want to echo a compliment to both of you. This is a lot of material. And I think the summary materials you prepared to present to us did a great job of sort of lifting things up to the top level and giving us a way of evaluating things from a broad perspective. Because it's easy to get lost in the details of that you have to prepare, the details that underlie it. But I think you both did a great job with that, so thank you. This may be a little off topic, I support the emphasis on diversity. I'm going to ask one question that might be a little indelicate. Do you think, you talked a lot about how very senior our teaching staff is? You're very
experienced. Let's say experience.
I get to say
That's
senior,
my
yeah.
intent.
Experience, how experienced
Yeah.
The teaching staff is. Does that create problems with bringing in more diverse? Does it mean you just have less room to bring in more?
Oh, I see what you're asking.
Yeah. More teachers with more varied backgrounds, because you already have this existing established, experienced staff. And if that does create kind of an issue, how are you dealing with it?
Yeah, we're really looking at every opportunity, whether it's a new position for whatever reason, the few that we add along the way, or there's attrition. It's when the openings happen that we're really looking at it. And I think that's okay. I think the balance of, the incredible benefit of a experienced staff and having such retention of our teachers is a really big positive. So I think actually there's a benefit to how the pace is going. It's a little, CPS is a little, bigger, so we're seeing it a little differently there. And I think that's okay too. So I think the pace is feeling just about right at the moment, but I see why you asked. Thank you. Thoughtful question.
And then the other question I had has more to do with substance. It isn't purely economic, and maybe it has to do with adding positions. And it has to do with emphasis in what you're teaching. One of the other areas where I think there's a need to be more focused, in addition to all the appropriate focus we've been discussing about sustainability, is civics education, is teaching people how government works, because the fact that has not been taught effectively for a long time in many places, I think it has been a contributing factor to some of the things that we're dealing with as a society now. And is that something that you guys are giving thought to? Is that an expansion area? Are there existing programs within the schools? Are there external resources that you're looking at that you can use to support activities there? I actually know of one or two. So I just want to get a sense of what you're doing.
Yeah. All of the above. The state frameworks and curriculum require that we teach civics education, which we've done for a long time. We now are mandated to do it in the 8th grade. That's one of my easiest examples because it's such a wide scale endeavor. Last year, the kids all wrote letters advocating for a change to the Indigenous Peoples Day title in October. This year, I think they're going to take that on at a state level. So we're really trying to empower kids and help them become advocates for whatever is important to them. I think the other place we're seeing it is we're empowering them within the schools, and the voice that they have there and the advocacy that they can play there, and giving them opportunities to feel like they can influence what's going on. And then, of course, we work with our state reps and senators and all that really, specific education on the structure of the government and the role that it plays. We partner with local organizations, League of Women Voters being top of that list probably. And I think we're always looking for ways to expand it, whether, beyond formal instruction, beyond formal projects, and then help them see that there's just day-to-day ways to engage. I mean, Jared and I are working right now with 2 high school kids who decided that skate park needed to be upgraded, and pretty much summoned us out there so they could, start to make something happen. So it's pretty exciting when the kids see how they can have a role in their world around them and make a difference.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Lois. Greg, thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, obviously most of them have been covered. I had a quick question for Jared here. I live right near the high school, so it's obviously been getting more activity lately now coming out of COVID and stuff. Can you remind me the scale and are we increasing on, I'll say, rental usages of the gym or properties of that from other parties to use the pool or the public schools at times?
Yeah, good question. So I'd say not right now. We are limiting it we're not renting it out to big parties right now. So we're not seeing a big increase right now in the rental. There are asks that we have to sometimes deny, not a lot of them. But I think we're sort of on par with, maybe better than last year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know that we might hit our target of 20 to 30,000 in revenue after all of the custodial costs are paid out.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. And thank you for, the past 2 years leading us through all this. We greatly appreciate both your teams and all the work you guys have done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Peggy, did you have a question?
I was just going to make first of all, compliment to Dr. Hunter and Jared. I'm just so impressed at how just forthcoming you are to the FinCom and the town, maybe compared to past administrations. Kathy, I just want you mentioned energy savings and renewability. I guess there's only so much that FinCom and the school committee can do, and I would urge you to focus on the light board for those issues. The student, and same, you asked what I'm sorry, what the school administration can do for student body diversity, and I mean nothing. That's the other than Metco, which is we've done faithfully and well for so many years. I don't think it's fair for us to address the school committee on diversity in the town of Concord. I think there are other boards and committees and affordable housing, et cetera, that.
Peggy, there are people that move into town that are diverse, people that are Asian, people that are Indian, people that are, I mean, there's all kinds of diversity. And I was just asking out of curiosity, Dr. Hunter, in terms of how the school was doing. So
Okay.
I apologize.
I misunderstood you then, Kathy. I thought you were urging them to bring in diverse people, and so you were saying, how do you accommodate the diverse people that are coming to town, which is an extremely good question. And then Dr. Hunter, I would just add, I know the middle school does that every year, a wonderful program, a Public Works Day. And they bring all the kids down to the Public Works, down to Kai's Road, and all the Public Works and electric and all the different people and playing. It's a really wonderful program. So
Yeah, I'm hoping we get back on track. They haven't gone the last 2 springs because of the pandemic, but we should be back on track for this spring. It is a great trip, no question.
it is, and I went when my oldest was in middle school and basically got roped into town government, and that was 30 years ago. So.
All right, thank you, Peggy. Before we go to the public, maybe turn to Cynthia and Sarah to see if they have any thoughts or comments they'd like to share.
Thank you, Parashar. I'm not going to dodge the question, but I think I'd like to have the full school committee have a discussion next Tuesday. I've taken down some notes of things that I think we'll bring back to have a further discussion. And I know you want to have some more complete numbers by next week, so we'll try to get an idea as to when those will be available to you. But you do want to present them in next Thursday night, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful and stay within our timeline of giving the committee sort of a fuller perspective of where the town overall is going as we head into the heart of the budget season.
Great. And I just want to thank the Finance Committee. It's been a great discussion as always, and I look forward to having more discussion about the 5-year outlook. And then obviously we're going to get into a deeper discussion about FY23.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. Sarah?
No. Just like Cynthia, I look forward to speaking with the rest of the committee members about this. I look forward to seeing, I guess, the total numbers and getting to talk about what else you guys have asked about tonight. Lots of notes like Cynthia to go back to. And thank you so much for, I think this has been a good process, and so I appreciate all of your time.
Great, thank you. I see Court and I see Terry. Do you guys open it up for public comment here?
Christine, did you have a question for me?
Oh,
I don't have a question.
Sorry,
for
Chris.
you. Thank you. It's another topic.
Terry and Court, any questions, comments?
For me,
Court? Okay. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, so just, from a process perspective, maybe to review kind of where we are a little bit here. So we have 2 pieces of the puzzle, at least preliminarily. So we have some projections from the town. We'll have some updated projections from the school. We don't yet have any revenue numbers, right? So one of the critical pieces of the pie for us in determining the preliminary guidelines will be how the revenue looks. So it's difficult for us to, have a feel for it. We can see what the costs are up, the costs of the town, if you recall. And again, this was just areas where they wanted some additional spending. Those numbers could come in pretty high. And we don't yet know how much local receipts are going to recover. So we'll be feeling our way through it. So I want the schools and the school committee to understand that. We don't yet have a sense for whether we're going to be constricted on revenues yet. That's why I was asking the question, Dr. Hunter, about your use of reserves and how that can soften the blow in 23. So just we're still cautiously optimistic, I guess. We'll see what we get, but thank you.
I think next week
you think you might have the projections?
Sorry?
Yes, next week we should have them, right?
Yeah, next week we should have our first cut of the revenue numbers.
First cut,
Thank
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see any other hands up. Chris, did you have another question or you heard? Okay, great. So I want to reiterate and thank both Jared and Lori for pulling all of this together. I think, as all of you have said, copious amount of information, a lot to observe or to absorb. I think the slide deck that you guys walked us through was very helpful, frankly. And I was taking notes, and I think for me and others on the committee, it'll serve a bit of a touch point and a reference point as we take a look at the fiscal year 23 numbers. And kind of see how you guys are adjusting your budget requests in light of that, the strategic priorities you've identified. And thanks to the school committee, Sarah and Cynthia as well. I know you guys have put in some time and effort prior to both Jared and Lori coming here. So appreciate that and appreciate the collaboration on pulling this together. I think this is a first time through for both the town and the schools, and hopefully the 5-year high-level projections have been useful and will be useful as we finalize them next week. So I want to thank everybody for today's meeting, and can I get a motion to adjourn?
I said 2 quick things before you go. I'm sorry, I don't want to keep the meeting longer. 2 quick things, clarification, because there's been a number of questions on the percentage for the teachers. So I just went and got that for you all. So in FY22, 104.8 of the 223.6 are on top step. So that's 46.8%. By FY27, we're at 152.4, which is 68%. So that meets our, I think Mr. Banfield pointed out that why is CTA higher than CCTA, because they have more on top step. And then at CCTA, and they have less at top step. And then CCTA, currently 96 of our 156 teachers, or 61%, are on top step. And then by FY27, 124 of the 156, which is 80%. And then the last thing, I was kind of laughing because I was anticipating it a lot. I got no circuit breaker questions. So Christine and Dee usually always ask me for circuit breaker. I was ready for it. There's no circuit breaker. So we've gone over it a lot. So that's good.
Stay
I'm glad
ready.
you guys know a lot. Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jared. Can I get a motion very quickly?
So moved.
Move to adjourn.
Second,
There you go. I don't have a second. Let me go around the horn here. Chris,
yes.
Parashar says yes. Dee,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian.
I'd like to compliment the finance committee on getting out of here so fast. This is amazing. So Chris, Parashar, thank you. Yes.
John,
Yes.
let's see, Dean,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Lois,
Yes.
Greg.
Yes, but Brian, this is the guidelines subcommittee, right? Not the finance committee.
Listen, fast is fast. It's
Not debatable. This is.
Hey, my goal was 9:30.
Before 9
We're
o'clock.
gone. It's 9 o'clock. So
My goal was 9:30, Brian, so we've made it. Greg, yes.
Yes.
Peggy. Amrith.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and we'll talk next week.
Thanks,
Good
Brian.
night.
Great meeting.
Thank you.